everybody, it's Beth. Welcome to Infinite Garden. This week I am way outside of my comfort zone and we are going to be doing a full face of drugstore makeup. If that sounds good to you, please stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I talk a lot about makeup on my channel, but I'm usually in the luxury or kind of mid-range to luxury space. And one thing I haven't talked about much at all on my channel here is drugstore makeup. I love watching drugstore makeup reviews on YouTube. My favorite drugstore makeup reviewers are Tamer's Timeless Beauty, Kelly Gooch, she's excellent, and Ali Glines. If any of you watch makeup or beauty content, I'm sure you've heard of those three creators. They're excellent, and I feel like they have taught me a lot about what is available at the drugstore and what's good. And I've been out with my mom now for a little while, a bit of an extended stay over the holidays, and I've had occasion to go in and out of different drugstores while I've been here. And I found myself at one point in the drugstore aisle thinking, you know what, there's never been a better time for me to do this. I'm going to do a full face of drugstore. So I have all of the makeup here in front of me. I applied this face of makeup on earlier today, about 6 hours ago, and I'm going to tell you about these products that I used and my thoughts on them, and at the end I'll share some of my hits and misses overall. Over the last couple of days, I've actually purchased 2 primers, and they were both green primers. One is the e.l.f. green primer. This is called the Tone Adjusting Face Primer. I tried this one first because I am interested in green primers. If you've watched my channel before, you know that I will use it to correct my foundation match. I'm a little olive toned, and I usually find that most foundations are too intensely yellow or too intensely orange, and sometimes a green color corrector can help me adjust that color. So I wanted first to share the e.l.f. primer. I didn't use this one today. I don't know how much I like it. The color is kind of interesting. It has a bit of like a pea soup green, and the primer itself is really silicone-y. When you use it, you can really feel it's almost like that Becca primer, if you ever use that super silicone-y one. A little goes a long way, and if you like a silicone primer, I think this one's okay. But once you get it on, I don't think that its green color correcting properties are really that noticeable. The one I used in today's video and I have on my face is one I like a lot better, and this is by Maybelline. This is the Maybelline Master Prime. Also a little silicone-y. It's a very different color from the e.l.f. one. It's more of a pale kind of pistachio green with a lot of white base. So I would think that this one could be difficult to wear if you have deeper olive skin and that's what you're trying to use it for. But I do find that it feels hydrating and nourishing. It's also silicone based, but it's quite hydrating, and I like the finish that it leaves. This is the e.l.f. and this is the Maybelline. I think the e.l.f. primer finishes more matte and the Maybelline finishes a little bit more, somewhat more skin light or satin. But I like this. I have worn this now for the last 3 days, and I think it's a good primer. After priming my skin, I moisturized my lips with this Winky Luxe Matcha lip balm. Looks green in the bullet, but it goes on clear. It has this cute little pill design. I think that's pretty cute. I don't know, it's not totally my aesthetic, but I do see what they did there. I think it's pretty cute. I found this works well. I'm absolutely going to use every little bit of this matcha balm. For complexion, I purchased 2 products, a foundation and a concealer. One's a hit, one's a miss. The foundation is NYX's Total Control Pro. This is the box that it comes in. I still have it in the box because it's very messy and I found myself in need of the box. I have it in the color Nude, which has turned out to be, I think, a really good match for me. It's really quite neutral. It comes in a glass bottle, which I like, and it's a dropper format. It is extremely liquidy. I hope you can see this. You can see it's just dripping off. When I put this on my hand, you can see how little is on my hand, and it blends out. I'm putting this right on top of those primers, so it's going onto a silicone primer. I think that's good. A little goes a long way, and I think the coverage is good. It's listed as a medium coverage. It says sheer to medium coverage with a demi-matte finish that looks true to skin. I think that's a pretty accurate representation of how this looks. I'm calling this one a miss because of how messy it is. I don't think I'm going to pack it in my suitcase to go home with me. I'm a little nervous that it's going to get everywhere, but at the same time, part of me wants to keep it because I think it's a good foundation to use on the back of my hands where I have some spots. I like that. I think that it looks good on the hands. On the face a little bit, I do think that it broke up over the day. Even on primer, I tried it with and without primer. It definitely performs better with a primer. I don't really like this particular finish in a foundation, but if that's something that you're looking for, I actually think that this one could be worth checking into. It didn't really work out for me, but it's not bad at all. The other foundation product I tried is an absolute hit. I tried Covergirl's Trueblend Undercover Concealer. This is really good. I have it in the shade beige. It says buff, beige, and chamois. This is a pretty good match. It's a little orange for me, so this one I have been glad to pair with this primer because it's the type of thing that I would use this green primer for. I ended up, because I didn't really love the way the foundation applied, I tried using this as my main foundation, so I put it where I needed it, under my eyes, where I have some darker spots or some discoloration, and then blended from there. I found that this concealer blends really beautifully. It definitely could handle that, and I'm still wearing it. It's 6 hours later. You can see some of my oils coming through, but that's just the nature of my skin. To me, it's as good as any other concealer I've ever tried. I would compare this most closely to the NARS Creamy Concealer. I find that it's not overemphasizing my lines. It doesn't seem to be breaking up, and it seems to be holding its own throughout the hours of wear. I feel like this was a lucky find. Next, I worked on my brows, and if you haven't watched my recent video all about eyebrows, I'll put a card up here. The thumbnail says that I tried everything, but the reality is I didn't dig too far into the drugstore space, and if I had, I would have included this brow pencil from e.l.f. This is the e.l.f. Instant Lift Brow Pencil, and it has both a spoolie on one end and a nice fat tipped pencil on the end, and you get quite a lot of product in this particular pencil. It's 0.006, which is a lot more than some of the other brow pencils that you get from Sephora. And if you watch my video, I break down those products by cost per ounce. This would be an excellent value. I have it in the shade, I'm having a really hard time reading the shade that I have this in, but it's like neutral brown. When you're at the e.l.f. display, I was at Target looking at the e.l.f. display, and this was the primary color that they offer, that they show being like their main neutral kind of medium brown. That's the one that I got. It's this one, and I think it's excellent. You can kind of see my brow here. I think that it really does offer a nice neutral, not too warm brown. When you have silver hair, and for me, you know, my natural brown hair still shows, but it's pretty ashy. It always was ash brown. I find that sometimes medium brown pencils can go a little bit warm. This one doesn't. This one really is neutral. I like the formula. I think it holds up. Again, it's been 6 hours, and I think it looks really good. I think this is an excellent buy. For gel, I used the Pixi Petra. This is just a clear brow gel, and it has basically no scent. It's just a good clear brow gel. I find overall it's holding well. It's maybe a little bit of a lighter hold than the Anastasia Beverly Hills clear brow gel. It's on par with the Sephora brow gel that I've been using as well, which is really good. I think this is a good buy too. I actually had a hard time when I was at the drugstore picking out a brow gel. There weren't as many options as I wanted. I saw a lot of tinted brow gels, which isn't really my thing. I think I prefer a clear brow gel. Pixi isn't the lowest priced drugstore brand at Target. It's, I think, one of the higher end ones. In terms of pricing, this one isn't so far off from some of the products they do sell at Sephora, but it is still a pretty good buy, I think. The next thing I put on my face was eyeshadow, and I used this palette from Wet n Wild. What's interesting to me about this quint is that when I saw it, I was sort of shocked. Before I came out to visit my mom, I took 5 shadows from my Natasha Denona Biba palette, and I put it in this other palette that came originally from the Natasha Denona Camel palette, but you can pop all of the pans out of these palettes so you can make your own, and sometimes I'll do that. The Biba palette, if you're familiar with it, is all neutrals. So sometimes I'll pop out shades from that palette and put it in this 5 pan and make myself a little neutral 5 pan for when I travel. And this is the neutral 5 pan palette that I made for myself for this particular trip. I wanted to have a warm option and a cool option and a shimmer option here that would work with both shades. Anyway, so when I was at Target and I was looking for the eyeshadow palette I wanted to try, I was looking at, you know, tons of different options. There's so much available, and some probably better than Wet n Wild. But when I saw this palette, it reminded me so much of this palette that I'd made that I decided I had to try it. And the Wet n Wild price point is sort of hard for me to even fathom. I don't understand how it could possibly be that inexpensive. So I kind of wanted to try a Wet n Wild formula when I am accustomed to a similar color story with a Natasha Denona formula. So let's talk about it. I think that overall, you can wear this as eyeshadow. You can do it. It's possible. I have some feelings though. I think I could definitely tell the difference. I'm spoiled. I started, as I often do, with a dark shade just to immediately create some sculpture in my crease. I think that overall it works, but I found it to stamp for sure and then struggle to blend. I mean, I don't know what you would expect from a shadow like this. I think that's what you're supposed to expect, but I did struggle with it, and I'm not really used to struggling with these kinds of things. Thank you, Natasha Denona. After I got this shade mostly settled, I used this shade here to blend. Then I added sheen with this silver shade and then did a little topping with glitter. That type of application structure is really familiar to me from my Pat McGrath shades, my Natasha Denona shades, and it was interesting to see, you know, how that worked out with a Wet n Wild formula. The glitter, as it compares to like a Pat McGrath glitter, does wind up looking a little juvenile. It's a little piecey and a little multicolored in a way that I do think kind of shows its price point. But overall, I think the tasteful curation of the colors of this palette are really impressive, and you can actually get, I think, a pretty sophisticated look from this little palette. I'm not going to reach for this over my Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath shades, and it's why I wanted to get a lower price point product and one with just a few shades because I didn't want to be overly wasteful. At Target, there are many brands there that are offering significantly large palettes in a whole range of colors. I considered buying those, but I also knew that I was unlikely to wear either the colors or the formulas much, and I didn't want to be wasteful. This seemed like kind of a bite-sized trial that was worth doing for review for my channel, but I wound up being more impressed than I thought. Like, even just this shade, this pinky shimmer, if you look at this, it is really quite a pretty rosy shade here. I mean, that's a wearable shade. I found this very interesting. Once I decided I was done with my makeup, I went on to eyeliner. This is a Pixi product. It is in the color London Fog, which is a kind of metallic charcoal, and it's in this wooden pencil. I have found that I think I prefer my eyeliners to be in wooden pencils in most cases, and I really like the idea of a product that you can just sharpen and that isn't entirely made of plastic. I really appreciate that. This one, I don't know how available this is. There was only one of these, and it appears to be a collab between the intellectual property Hello Kitty and Pixi. So I honestly don't know how widely available this is. I think this is nice. This is a really pretty charcoal gray pencil. I find that it tight lines well. I find that it makes a good smudgeable line. It's a super serviceable eyeliner, and I expect that I'll use this entire thing. I really like that it's a wooden pencil. I think that's great. To finish up the eye look, I went in with Lash Paradise. This is a somewhat iconic drugstore mascara. I've heard the influencers Hannah Louise Poston and Allie Glines talk about L'Oreal's Lash Paradise, and I wanted to try it. I do love a glam mascara. I like Pat McGrath's Dark Star. I've enjoyed Dior's Show. I love Bobbi Brown's Smoky Eye Mascara. So I thought this one might be in that same category. So you can kind of see, you can see me putting it on in the B-roll footage. It does make a bold kind of spidery lash. I don't mind a spidery lash. My eyelashes are somewhat long. I do use Grande lash, and my lashes, you know, are pretty full because of it. And what I really like is when my mascara fattens my lashes into like a wall of fringe. The spidery effect is okay if they go together, but I prefer kind of like a thickening and fattening over a spidery lengthening, generally speaking. I do think this is a good mascara. I do think it leans a little spidery. I'm going to plan to use this entire tube, and I will check back in with you guys on this because I do feel like mascara takes a while to understand. I tend to like my mascaras the most about halfway into their life, like maybe a month after I open them. That's when I really start to like them. So it's hard to know. I just have had this one open now a few days. So far, so good. Like I said, a little spidery. Maybe when it gets a little thicker and kind of gumpier, it might wind up doing some of the more thickening effect that I like a lot. But I think I show it in my B-roll footage, but just for good measure, this is what the brush looks like. For blush, I used Milani's Cheek Kiss in the color, what is this? Nude Kiss. It comes in this kind of medium tone rosy pink. It looks a little brighter right now in my monitor, but in person compared to other blushes, I would say this is kind of a medium tone versus light. And it is in a balm format. I'll let this catch the light. This does go on sheer. I think that I like this. I do find that when I put it on my cheeks, it does stick a little bit to where that I then have to kind of be careful about blending it out. It doesn't blend like a dream, but it does wind up blending out. It doesn't stay sticky afterwards. I was nervous about that in this kind of balm format, that it would remain sticky. It doesn't. It does settle right in. And I think this is an incredibly beautiful and somewhat sophisticated color. It is kind of a bit muted, which I really like. And I found that on my skin, it does on some level kind of like almost disappear into it. It doesn't give me a bright blushy effect. It gives me kind of a nude effect, which is really what I like with blush. Again, because of my particular kind of olivey undertones, sometimes blush can look really doll-like on me, very bright pink and unnatural and blushy. So I'm often looking for something that does sort of wind up looking neutral or natural on me. And I found that this color does. I actually like this and really enjoyed using it. I think this is worth checking out if you like a balm format. For bronzer, I thought I would try the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. I know it's somewhat iconic in the drugstore space. When I went to go look for a butter bronzer that I thought would suit me, I couldn't find one. They all looked too orange for me. Because of my olive undertones, bronzers tend to look very, very orange on me, so I tend to like a bronzer with a bit of a rose tone included. This one is the light bronzer, and the reason why I liked it is because it had so much peach and rose in it that I thought it might wind up looking good on my skin, and I think that it does. I think it mostly shows up in my forehead area where I use it almost like a bronzer, a little bit under the cheeks here. I think it's good. It didn't show up as very dark. Again, I got the light one and I'm a light medium. I'm not super, super fair. So light is going to be light on me, but I think this is a good shade for me. In terms of formula, the bronzer that I'm using right now that I really like is the Gucci formula bronzer, and I use the lightest shade in the Gucci bronzer. This one I would say is quite a bit more powdery. When you apply the brush, it does sort of kick up a lot of powder in the pan, more than I am used to, and I think it shows up a little less on my skin than that one. I can say it surpassed my expectations for a drugstore bronzer. After that, I set my foundation with this Makeup Revolution translucent powder that's pressed in this pan. I think it's okay. It didn't wow me. It is translucent. It did not change the look of my makeup. It did not make my makeup look overly cakey. I also didn't really feel like it was doing much to absorb, but I also feel like overall my makeup looks pretty good and pretty set, sometimes compared to some of the higher end products that I'm using. So I'm not really sure. I want to live with this more and use this one more to see what I really think of it. Like I said, it didn't wow me, but I don't have any specific complaints against it. I think it feels to me somewhat chalkier and less sophisticated than the powders that I'm used to, but I don't know if that means it works any less better. So far, jury's out on this one, but it's not a no. For highlight, I reached for the Beauty Bakerie Bite Sized. I think this is called Snackeroony. I don't know. And the shade is Sugarcoat Everything. This is a whitish, very neutral highlighter. It's neither pink nor orange nor yellow. It's just kind of white and pretty. It's very similar to Pat McGrath's Lunar Allure. I would say in my collection, that's the closest dupe for this. Or I would say this may be trying to dupe Pat McGrath's Lunar Allure. I have no idea which one came first, but they're super close. I think Lunar Allure is a little more subtle. It melts and it's not quite as obvious as a highlighter. This one is slightly more obvious, but I think entirely useful as like an inner corner highlight, maybe a little brow bone detail, maybe a little tip of the nose thing. I think this is still going to be useful for me. And I think it's very beautiful and quite sophisticated. I thought this was pretty cool. I think you could make a cute little stocking stuffer as well if you have someone in your life that you think might enjoy dabbling with highlights. I think this is pretty cute. Okay, finally lips. I have to tell you that the lips category I think is my favorite so far of all of these. I'm just so impressed by what I found. So Target carries the lip bar, and I bought their pencil in the color Straight Lovin'. It's a very neutral rosy brown in, I would say, a medium depth. This is a wood pencil, which I love. I do already need to sharpen it. I've been going crazy with this. I think the tone is really pretty. I think it lays down a nice line. I think it blends easily. It feels creamy. It's really good. I think this is an excellent lip pencil, and I really like this color. This is a total win. I love it. And then to go with that, you can kind of see this similar color. This is the Maybelline Superstay ink crayon. If you're familiar with this, it's in a tube like this and you can crank it out. This is the color I have on my lips now. I think this is very beautiful. I really tried hard to pick colors that I thought I would actually use, that I really felt would look good on me. And I had no trouble finding these colors. I think this is a sophisticated color and I love how it looks on me. The wear time is excellent. It doesn't rub off on drinks and other things. It stays on while I'm eating. I did reapply before filming because it had been 6 hours and I had had dinner, but it wasn't completely gone. I just needed to touch up and reapply before I came on here. I love this. I sincerely, very strongly recommend this particular product, the Maybelline Superstay Ink Crayon. These are great. Finally, to finish the lips, I used this lip gloss from the Lip Bar. This is in the color Bourgeois. I also picked up this color in Miss Independent. They're really beautiful. They're kind of similar. One is more brown and one is slightly more pink. They go on quite thick and pigmented. These aren't clear glosses. These are the kinds of glosses you can use on their own. In this case, I was applying them over a pencil and a color stay, so I just wanted a little bit of shine. But if you wanted to put these on top of bare lips, you could, and you would end up getting a nice color payoff. I think these are really nice. I think the packaging is luxe. I think the colors are really beautiful and sophisticated. I think this is a nice lip gloss at the drugstore. I really do. I think this competes with some higher end formulas. I was super impressed by this. In general, I would say I was extremely impressed by the formulas I found at the drugstore. I'm sure a lot of you are probably sitting back and laughing at me because like you've been telling me for a long time that I should probably check some of these out, and I'm so glad I did. I think these are definitely worth checking out. And I plan to use every drop of this concealer. You'll see it again from me, I'm sure. The two products I think I was least impressed by were the e.l.f. color correcting primer. I don't know how much color correcting this one really does. I think it's okay if what you're looking for is a super silicone-y primer, then I think it's going to be fine. But if you purchase this thinking you're going to get significant color correction for your redness, I don't think that you'll be super satisfied with this particular product. I just have to say that. And then also the NYX Total Control Pro foundation. In the end, I was just disappointed with the packaging. I think the formula is actually pretty interesting. I'm not exactly sure how one would improve on this. I have to say the bottle is glass, so if you can manage how messy this one is, I do think it's nice that it comes in a glass bottle, so I don't want to rag on it too hard. But I would say those were the two I was maybe the least excited about. But overall, this is really good makeup, and I think I'm going to use almost all of it. I'm not exactly sure how much use I'll get out of the Wet n Wild, but I have to say I was actually in the end impressed by how well this performed considering its price point. What are some of your drugstore favorite products? I really want to hear. Please drop a note down in the comments. You know I love to hear from you. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well out there, and I hope you have a great week ahead. Thank you so much for watching. Talk soon.